Common Knowledge is brought to you by our friends at Game Grid Midvale, our local game store who puts players first with weekly competitive events, below market pricing, and the best customer service available. Check out their online inventory using the link in our description.
We are also sponsored by inkgaming.com. Use coupon code CCMTG10 at checkout for a 10% discount on all inked gaming supplies and accessories. You can support the show directly through Patreon at patreon.com/common knowledge.
This is the Common Knowledge Podcast. It's not about the cost, it's about the knowledge. Here are your hosts, Brandon Clark and Lawbert.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Pioneer Days podcast. Wait, what?
The Pioneers Day podcast? Is that the 24th of July?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't live in Utah, it's called Pioneer Day in Utah, and it's like our Utah Day.
Yeah, it's a state holiday here in Utah. And it's also the new name of our podcast because, wait, are we still doing this common thing?
I'm not playing Pioneer.
What? No, you're probably not. All right. I guess we'll just be Common Knowledge today. Episode 85 of the Common Knowledge podcast, to be exact.
And you didn't give me a title or anything this episode, but you could have totally said Babyface because I shaved all my beard.
You did, and you look like a baby.
It was for a Halloween costume.
I haven't introduced us yet, so you didn't
okay.
really give me, because I just had to do my Pioneer bit.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I'm your host, Brandon, and joining with me, as always, is Sean, the Babyface Lawbert.
Yeah, I went as Mermaid Man, from SpongeBob, Mermaid Man. Anyway, I had like
Merman. Is it Mermaid Man or is it just Merman? It is Mermaid Man.
It is
Mermaid Man. And did you have a barnacle boy?
Yeah, it was my girlfriend.
Nice.
It was so perfect.
Evil.
Yeah, the people at the party kept on being like, say evil, and I was just like, I didn't anticipate people asking me to do this. What I did have though is my belt. I could flip it upside down, like it had Velcro, so I could take off the M and switch it to Wumbo. It was pretty sweet.
Oh my gosh, I want to be a little kid again. That's so fun. Cool. Well, I'm going to continue to observe my Halloween tradition of this year of not dressing up, turning off all my lights on Halloween night, and not answering my door.
Lame.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's a lie. I have to take my son trick-or-treating this year.
There you go.
My wife started a new shift. She's working graveyard shifts now, and she'll be working Halloween night. So I got to do the trick-or-treating this year.
That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to get into it?
Yeah. So, this Pioneer thing.
Oh, gosh.
I'm just kidding. No, this is episode 85, Common Knowledge. We're doing Mantle of Tides is the topic of today's show. So, we're kind of suspending card of the week, but not really. Mantle of Tides will be our card of the week. We're going to talk about this card. It was on our top 5 lists, right? It was, right?
It was really high on our top 5 list. It was like number 2.
Number 2. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so cool. This card is really good. It's been making some splashes in the Pauper format. So we're going to talk about that card for a little bit, and then we've got a couple of deck lists. One deck list by Alex Ullman that is really cool and interesting, and then my take on Skred Delver. Very likely the deck that I'll be playing going forward, since something exciting happened on Monday besides the announcement of a new format.
I know, I was going to be like, man, there's an elephant in the room right now that we're not even addressing.
What happened, Sean?
There was a ban announcement. Thank the Lord. They banned Arkham's Astrolabe. We were predicting that it was going to be Ephemerate, but
I
Wizards
was
went.
predicting it would be Astrolabe, but I was hoping it would be Ephemerate.
Oh, okay. I was
But
predicting it would be Ephemerate, and like if I had to make a choice or like a bet a while ago, it would have been both of them. But they just went with the one, so it's still gonna be
this
Ephemerate decks.
really pessimistic of me, but just like based on Wizards banning patterns in the past, I felt like they were going to totally miss Ephemerate and just ban Astrolabe, as that's like the noisiest card, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you play all these crazy decks and it's getting played in Modern and Legacy, and that's just like the obvious, like ban it, okay, but I don't know. I was expecting fully that it was going to be the Astrolabe and only the Astrolabe, but I was crossing my fingers that it would be either both or Ephemerate. But I if you asked me to make a bet on it, I would have said Astrolabe, and that's it.
Okay.
But
But it does remedy part of the problem that those decks could play so many blue lands that they could play double blue spells like Counterspell, as well as have an entire creature package that's white creatures and then like a couple of blue creatures, and they weren't really punished for it. They could throw in Scred, so they had premium removal spells in a blue-white deck, and then of course go into their sideboard or just splash a green spell if they want to gear against aggro or whatever. So this does remedy a lot of the really bad problems with that deck, so it's not going to be like broken.
yeah, I think it's still the most powerful like late game thing you can do is cast Ephemerate on Archaeomancer. I just think the issue there is that without Astrolabe, you're using Prophetic Prism, and that card being 2 mana against aggro decks is a really big like issue for that deck. And I think that aggro decks are going to have a much easier time getting under that, where your turn 2 play has to be tap out to play, your Prophetic Prism, and then your turn 3 is cast one removal spell and like a creature to back it up. And by that time, like a deck like Stompy can already have put an Elephant Guide on something, or have just gone so wide around your one core Skyfisher or whatever that you're playing on turn 3 that it just doesn't matter. You're too far behind. And so
Yeah,
I think
it
that'll be a good
really,
thing.
like if you look at just like the converted mana cost going up. Say you're playing the exact same list, but the CMC goes up by those 4 cards are increased by 1. That makes your early turns a lot more difficult because you can't just go turn 1 this, turn 2 white creature, and every time you cast it, it's doubling that mana cost. So it's not just increasing it by 1 on that card. You have to recast that card 2 or 3 times. So it really increases the CMC of your deck to a point where it's not worth it.
Yeah, so I really think we're going to see Jeskai Ephemerate decks falling out of favor. And maybe that's just what Wizards believed, was that if they ban Astrolabe, Ephemerate's just not as oppressive because the most powerful deck is dead. I just see Jeskai really struggling in the future against aggressive decks without Astrolabe. It's still
Same.
going to be a pain in the butt to play against Astrolabe or Ephemerates against Tron and stuff.
And things like the Familiars deck was using that card, and they were still on that many colors. They didn't play Astrolabe, so like, yeah, there's definitely use cases for it still. So
Yeah,
I plan
so
on trying out some cool stuff with it.
yeah, I'm kind of excited to see how this is all going to shake out. So, should we talk about Mantle of Tides? Main topic?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
Main topic.
all right. So, our main topic today, we're discussing everything Mantle of Tides. Mantle of Tides is a single blue for an artifact equipment. It says the equipped creature gets +1/+2, and whenever you draw your second card each turn, attach Mantle of Tides to a creature you control, and it has an equipped cost of 3. So, Sean, why don't you break this card down for the listeners really quick?
I don't know if there's a lot to break down. It's just the +1/+2 that is automatically equipping to all of your creatures to make them outclass things that would normally cause a problem for your deck is incredibly powerful. It's not limited to sorcery speed, so brainstorms on your opponent's turn, or I don't know what else, but it's pretty much brainstorm on your opponent's turn can re-equip this and give you a free like 0 for 1 or 1 for 0.
So how trivial is it to equip this to your creature? I mean, are you having? Do you think you need to like specifically build your deck around this, or is this like just the kind of card that just fits into anything with cantrips and creatures?
That's exactly it. It fits into anything with cantrips and creatures. Ninja is in all of these decks, and it does a lot of work in like you get this onto a ninja, and then you have a much higher chance of getting through with that creature. And then if you are just getting through with your creature, that Mantle of Tides just starts moving around really easy every turn until they start throwing creatures into that ninja and just letting them eat it. So this not only makes it so you can attack easier, it does give you value.
And I do think it is important to note, though, that moving is not a May ability.
Yeah, but you can re-equip to the same creature.
Yeah. All right, that was the card Mantle of Tides. So now let's talk about a couple deck lists where it's featured in. Our first deck is called Blue Zoo. It was brewed up by Alex Allman, and he wrote an article about it on channelfireball.com. So if you guys are interested in learning more about it from Alex himself, you can go read his article. And he goes a lot further into Mantle of Tides in the format as well. So a lot of good stuff in that article. So the deck list is 16 Islands, 1 Mystic Sanctuary, 4 Slitherblade, 1 Fathom Seer, 2 Mana War, 4 Stormbound Geist, 1 Moonblade Shinobi, 2 Fairy Seer, 4 Fairy Miscreant, 4 Spellstutter Sprite, 4 Ninja the Deep Hours, 2 Spire Golem. That was a lot of creatures.
Yeah, there's some creatures that people may not be familiar with.
I'll
just go through. Yeah, so I'll just go down the list. Slitherblade is a 1 mana 1/2 that is unblockable. I don't think it has any relevant creature types. I think it's a merfolk, maybe.
It's a Naga.
It's a Naga, okay.
A Naga or a snake, whatever. I don't know, whatever Amonkhet had for the snake creature type.
Yeah, so then Fathom Seer, that is the 1/3 with morph. So you morph it for 3, and then to unmorph it, you cast Gush. that's pretty sweet.
Turn 2 islands to your hand, unmorph. When it unmorphs, you draw 2 cards.
Yeah. Usually, like if you're not morphing it, it's just a 2 mana 1/3, so you're not using that mode most of the time. Gush is a lot less good when you pay 3 mana for some part of it, even if you do get a creature with it. Mana War is the 2 and a blue for a 2/2 that returns a creature to its owner's hand. It's not a May ability, so it will be forced to come back to your hand if it's alone on the board. We know what Stormbound Geist does. That's the 2/2 Flying Undying. Mistblade Shinobi. You've got that one.
Moonblade Shinobi.
Dude, why I keep saying Mistblade? Because I think that's an actual card.
It probably is.
They're both ninjutsu creatures, but they do different things. Moonblade Shinobi is the one we're talking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Moonblade Shinobi is 3 generic and a blue for a human ninja. It's a 3/2 and has ninjutsu for 2 and a blue. So ninjutsu, yeah, we all know what that means. Whenever Moonblade Shinobi deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with flying.
And I think as we go through this list, consider that any of these creatures could have 1 or 2 Mantle of Tides equipped to them. So like Moonblade as a 3/2 is very respectable, but a 4/4 that when it hits you and makes a 1/1 is exceptional.
Yeah, it's really good.
Then we've got Fairy Seer, that's just the 1 mana 1/1 scry 2. Fairy Miscreant, if you don't know what that is, look up a mono blue Delver list. Spellstutter Sprite, Ninja of the Deep Hours, and Spire Golem. And he's only on 2 Spire Golems, which I really like. A lot of people will load their deck with these. Like I know that mono blue Delver a lot of the time has 4 Spire Golems in it lately, and those can clog up your hand, because even if you get to 3 mana, which is, I don't know, that should be good for a lot of decks, you can cast it, but it's really hard. Like, you're using your entire turn to cast it.
All right, so that's the creature suite. Just a lot of creatures to put Mantle of Tides on. Fathom Seer, that card's really just there as a way to draw cards at instant speed. allowing you to move the mantle on your opponent's turn. Unfortunately, I feel like that's probably not going to ever get anyone. Like, if you have the morph, they're just going to know it's probably Fathom Seer, and that you can move your mantle at will. But it's also just another good way. You can do it on your turn, too. You can move the mantle if you need to. So,
yeah,
that's kind of what that's for. Other than that, it's just, Mana War just gets things out of your way, so you can connect with Ninja the Deep Hours, etc. So now, let's move into the spell suite. So, 4 Preordain, 4 Counterspell, 1 Deprive, 2 Hieroglyphic Illumination, 3 Mantle of Tides, and 1 Sunken City.
I really want to play this deck. You said that we're going to do mono blue or like a Mantle of Tides list. And so I did actually get in about 2 hours of practice with a mono blue list with the equipment in it. And this looks just so much sweeter. Like, a lot of the problems I was having are solved here, even if it's not so tempo oriented. It's harder to beat tempo nowadays anyway against all these aggressive decks, and you don't have days. So it is only running 4 Preordain. You don't bother with the Ponders or the Brainstorms. Those have always been a little bit more clunky in mono blue lists, in my opinion, when you're not playing any of the shuffle effects. So that's how I would like to build a deck, and this is just built that way already. And the Sunken City, have we gotten to that yet?
No, let's talk about it.
So I've got it up here. It's blue for an enchantment. It says, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Sunken City unless you pay blue. And it says blue creatures get +1/+1. So even against, if you're playing the other mono blue lists, most of these creatures have more toughness than just all the 1/1s that other deck is playing. So your creatures still outclass those, and if you're playing a different color against a different color, all of your creatures really do outclass everything. Like, your Slither Blades are 2/3s, so if they need to block, they are more than capable of doing that, and you just end games quick with that Sunken City. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it just makes your creatures so big.
And it's an old card. The reason you haven't seen it ever is because
it was from the Dark, right?
Yeah, it was part of the unification list of cards that we got. We didn't cover it in our episode. We started to cover it, and I think we misread it so many times that we just cut it entirely. But here it is.
All right. Other card that kind of stands out is Deprive. I think this is going to start becoming much more of a mainstay in the format now that Mystic Sanctuary is here. It's just such a powerful endgame Deprive plus Mystic Sanctuary. So for those who don't know, Deprive is blue for an instant that says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, return an island to your hand, counter target spell. So you set up with Deprive and Mystic Sanctuary, you deprive them, picking up your Mystic Sanctuary. Then you play your Mystic Sanctuary, you put your Deprive back on top of your library. Then you're drawing it again. And you're just drawing a counter spell every single turn. And if you're able to manage their board pretty well, eventually this just kind of comes like a little soft lock where the card they're drawing that turn, the turn where you've got Deprive back, is probably getting countered. Not to mention, it's so easy for this deck to draw cards on instant speed with Hieroglyphic Illumination, and Fathom Seer. And so you could think you're safe for a turn, and then they just go, okay, cycle Hieroglyphic Illumination for a blue, draw that Deprive, okay, deprive it, get back my Mystic Sanctuary, okay, my turn, untap, play it again. It's a really powerful 2-card little combo, so.
Yeah, but at the same time, my experience with it has been, it's not the easiest thing to, set up. You do have to already be ahead for it to be good. Otherwise, you are just countering a spell every turn, and I don't think, 1 counter spell a turn is good when you're behind. You're just guaranteeing that you're going to stay behind like that. So, if you can get ahead, it's very good. My point is, I don't think this is breaking our format. Even though it is powerful, it's not broken, and it does take a long time. It's late game stuff.
Yeah. Jumping into the sideboard, Alex has another copy of Fathom Seer, another Spire Golem, 2 Curfew. That one was interesting to me. 2 Dispel, 2 Echoing Truth, 3 Hydroblast, 1 Nurok Stealth Suit, 2 Relic of Progenitus, and 1 Sunken City. So I know Sean wants to talk about the Stealth Suit, but before we do that, let's discuss the Curfew.
Yeah, that is, I think for Boggles is one thing, and it does gain value with a lot of your ETB cards.
Oh, does Curfew doesn't target. Each player returns a creature to their hand.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was in my head thinking like I don't feel like there's a lot of creatures in here that you want to get value out of replaying.
That's
You
true.
do have some like cute things with like Spellstar Sprite or Fairy Miscreant, or being able to put one of your ninjas back in your hand so that you can re-ninja them and get that hit in. But then you've got like Slitherblade and Stormbound Geist, Spire Golems. It's like resetting Mana War is cute too. So I was just really curious why it was Curfew over a card like Vapor Snag. But that makes a lot of sense. If it doesn't target and it can get around Bogles.
Yeah. I think that's what it's for. I mean, the extra value of you getting stuff, I think, might be more of a hindrance most of the time. Like having to recast that, losing that tempo. But
I do think it is really powerful though. That ability is really powerful though in the context of Bogles, where like you have cards like Spellstar Sprite specifically. You use it to counter their Rancor or whatever. You take a little hit and then you Curfew and you get your Spellstar Sprite back to counter the next hexproof creature that wants to come down. So yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. If like Curfew is really good Boggles tech.
And I think if he's playing like a Curfew, and I don't think that there's any annul in here. I think he's just like, this is, if he's saying that this is better than what's the is it enchantment alteration? The one where you steal an enchantment?
Yeah.
If he's doing this instead of that, I'm willing to say that there's no case in which that you'd prefer enchantment alteration. Like, it's cool, your mind can go crazy with the blow up potential, but in the end of the day, like, they might still just have 4 enchantments to your one
it's
now.
like, I think unless you're specifically stealing like Armadillo Cloak, enchantment alteration is bad. And even if you steal the Armadillo Cloak, you might still be losing the race. Because
Ancestral Mask, I guess.
Ancestral Mask is all enchantments in play or just enchantments you control?
It is all.
All? Okay, so I guess if you steal their Ancestral Mask, you can make a really big thing. So there's a couple good targets for it, but what if they just go like, I don't know, 2 of the Ethereal Armors and a Rancor, and then you take an Ethereal Armor, and your creature's getting +1/+1, and then next turn they're going to put more enchantments on their creature, and you're still behind. And you really just kind of like 0-for-1 yourself.
Yeah, there's just more situations in which Curfew, I think, beats that deck.
Yeah, I think so. Do you want to talk to us about Nurok Stealth Suit? This is a card that I had never seen before until I was looking over this deck list.
Yeah, it's a card I've never gotten to work, but I've tried. It is 2 mana for an artifact equipment. It says equipped creature can't be the target of spells or abilities, so it just has Shroud. And it has an instant speed equip cost of blue, and then it has a normal equip cost of 1. So if this needs to be cheap, it's 1. If it needs to be tricky, and like, not only does it give one of your creatures hexproof, or not hexproof, Shroud. Since you can move this at instant speed, it basically gives all of your creatures Shroud, since it moves where you need it to when you need it to be there. It's just put this on the field, and then there's just the constant threat of you try to play a removal spell, I counter it with, for 0 cards in my hand. So this is just for like targeted removal decks.
All right. Anything else you want to cover in this deck list?
Just a couple of things I didn't really mention that I was thinking. I like only playing 1 Mystic Sanctuary. Like we said, the lock is powerful, but it's very much a late game thing. So you don't need to try to like, I gotta draw into that as fast as possible. I need multiples in my deck. No, you don't. You just do the one, you'll get there. Or if you don't, it's not that big of a deal. Your deck isn't built around it. It's just like single Mystic Sanctuary, single Deprive. You're good. Like, Deprive is not good in tempo decks. Like, I'll take that back. It is good in tempo decks. Playing them over and over can hurt you still, though. So play the one of each. That's good. And then I really like playing Hieroglyphic Illumination. Like, I don't know if we talked enough about that, of just having something instant speed to do when your opponent isn't doing anything. Card advantage is just, it's cool. It works really well with Mantle of Tides as well.
Yeah, and this is a card that I had on my radar when Gush got banned as like a potential slot in. There's some downsides to playing Accumulated Knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that this card, Hieroglyphic Illumination, was in the conversation. A lot of people thought I was wrong and silly, and they were probably right, because Accumulated Knowledge is really powerful. But I think just the consistency of Hieroglyphic Illumination is really what draws me to it. Of like, I need something to do on turn one, or I need to make sure I'm, making my first couple land drops. You cycle it. It's just another cantrip. You draw it late game, and it's just a game changer when you draw it late game, when you and your opponents are in top deck mode and you draw Hieroglyphic Illumination, and all of a sudden you have a full grip again.
I like that in matchups where it's not so great, like very, very aggressive matchups or something like that, you can take these out where or shave, where Accumulated Knowledge, it is all or nothing, play all of them, play none of them. It makes it easier.
I really like Hieroglyphic Illumination, and we can talk about it more in a minute.
Hooray!
Now we're going to go through Skred Delver. This is my own deck list. This is how I've kind of drawn it up. This could change. There's some things in here that I'm just like, there's one card in particular that I'm kind of just testing out that probably doesn't need to be there, but I don't know. We'll see. So, Skred Delver, 8 snow islands, 2 snow-covered mountains, 1 Mystic Sanctuary, 2 Ash Barrens, 4 Evolving Wilds for the mana base. And creatures, we've got 4 Delver of Secrets, 4 Fairy Miscreant, 4 Spellstutter Sprite, 1 Stormbound Geist, and 4 Ninja the Deep Hours. So, I think noticeably here, what's missing is Augur Bolus.
Yeah.
I feel like Mantle of Tides just kind of took its spot. I didn't want to have so few hits for Delver. It's already hard enough to flip Delvers in these decks. And, I just felt like some sort of creature or whatever, not instant sorcery type spell needed to make the cut. And Augur Bolus was kind of the one on the chopping block.
Oh, yeah. And I see you're still on Delver of Secrets.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people are trying out just put the Delvers, put in Fairy Seers, and just like think that Mantle of Tides will get them there in terms of damage.
Yeah.
There is still a lot of value, and in fact more value than there was a few weeks ago before the banning, in a 3/2 flyer that just closes out the game quick. Like, it's less turns that you have to counterspell every turn, and the game is won. If they're just racing you on the ground, it makes it really hard, where if you're just playing a bunch of 1/1s, that race becomes really difficult. We said don't play Delver for a while, and I don't know if that's entirely true anymore.
Yeah, I don't think that is true anymore. You do get a lot of free wins just out of having a really fast evasive threat. Not to mention, you live in Magical Christmas Land and you get to go turn 1 Delver, turn 2 blind flip it, cast Mantle, cast Preordain, smash for 4?
But that's just if you're not all the way in Magical Christmas Land, and we come back to like Thanksgiving Land, if you play Delver of Secrets and then turn 2 no flip, then you play Mantle of Tides Preordain, you attack with a 2/3, which is entirely fine.
Yeah, you build your own core Skyfisher.
It's not flying or anything. You're still attacking for 2, and then you've set up your next draw with Preordain so that you do flip. That's not unlikely.
That's not a bad failsafe of, I didn't flip my Delver. I guess I'm just going to have a 2/3 this turn and settle for a 4/4 next turn.
Yeah. I like it.
I think, needless to say, I'm really excited about the prospects of being able to play Delver of Secrets again. I love this. I just love Delver. I love it. I love Delver decks. I had a really fun time beating people with Jeskai, because for some reason people hadn't figured out that, like, unless you're playing Tron or something, your win rate's not great against Jeskai. So
Before we move on to the next part, is it... So when I played Scred Delver, I was on...
It is blue and red. Is it?
What? Oh.
Did you say, is it? Yeah.
Get out of here.
Blue and red. Those are the Is It colors.
When I played Is It Delver, I was on one mountain. I felt like having 6 cards in my deck that were red wasn't a great incentive to double up on that. Like, that can cause some really awkward draws of like, oh, it's a mountain. That's completely useless. Thanks, deck. And like, if I need to do it twice, I will just do it, untap, do it again. I can just imagine more scenarios where I'd rather have more islands, especially with Mystic Sanctuary. So that's where my head is at. I guess you have 7 red cards.
I don't know. I just think the time when you need to like cast 2 red spells in a single turn is high enough that it balances out those times where you just like, oh, my opener had 2 mountains in it, nothing else, mulligan. Whereas if this was like Mountain Island, this hand is great. Okay. I think that that's like balanced out by the turns where I like, especially like going into sideboarded games where a lot of the cards in these Scred sideboards are red.
Okay.
Trigger, Pyroblasts, stuff of that type. You know, where I'm gonna need to like, I need to have mana up to Lightning Bolt and Overload Electricity this turn, so I don't die to elves or whatever.
I trust you on this.
That's my rebuttal. But you could be right. You could be correct.
I didn't consider the sideboard at all, and you've jammed so many more games, hundreds and hundreds of more games with this than I have. And if you're saying that it is relevant, that you want to double red spell in a turn, I'll believe you.
Cool. All right, so we'll go into the non-creature spells here, starting at Mantle of Tides, 2 of them. Cut down on 3, because unlike Alex's Blue Zoo, this isn't a dedicated Mantle deck. This is a Delver deck, so you do want to try to keep that non-instant sorcery spell count as low as you can, which is something that these decks always struggled with. That goes back to our conversation about Augur Bolus. Mantle of Tides is really just kind of in there, I think, just based on its raw power level. You know, I think that this is just such a powerful card. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to put it into what I believe is going to be one of the more powerful decks going forward.
Yeah.
And that's sort of my mindset with this. It could shake out that this just doesn't work at all, and Mantle just shouldn't be in decks with Delver of Secrets. I don't believe that's true right now. They're just 2 powerful cards, and there's a little bit of dyssynergy having Mantle of Tides in your Delver of Secret deck, but I don't think enough to take away from, you know, just the amount of power you can have, you know, out of your best draws, like we talked about, attacking on turn 2 with a 4/4 flyer. What decks are going to beat that?
Not a lot. I mean,
I guess
a lot of people's removal won't even deal with that. Like, the amount of Screds in our format just went down by a lot, and a lot of the reason that Scred was able to keep up with big threats like that was because Astrolabe was powering them up.
Yeah, exactly. So Scred's a little worse. I do think we're going to see an uptick in Galvanic Blasts again, as we're probably going back to Boros Monarch over Jeskai as the core Skyfisher deck of choice.
Yeah.
So that's always just a clean answer to it, but that's still not gonna. They're not gonna be able to Galvanic Blast. Like, if say I'm on the play and I just make a 4/4 on turn 2 and crack you, and your turn 2 play is like, maybe you went artifact land, and now you can, you know, cast Thraben Inspector, but that's not super likely either out of them. So
it's been a while since I've seen a Thraben Inspector, hasn't it? Like,
yeah, a very while.
The Boros Metalcraft decks, I guess, were playing it, and you'd see it every once in a while, and you'd be like, oh, okay, I don't really care about that. Like, when you'd see it, it wouldn't really make an impression. I'm excited to see what the meta shakes out to be.
Yeah, it'll be really nice, because we're going back to pre-foil days. You know, if we're like similar to where the meta was like pre-foil, but now we're just adding all these cards from like Throne of Eldraine and all these not quite as broken cards from Modern Horizons. And so there's going to
And
be
the
a little,
unification. So
and the unification, yeah. So
Red Deck Wins became more of a thing.
yeah, we're finally going to get to see like the format settle down after the madness that was Astrolabe, Ephemerate, Jeskai. Like
The first like 11 months of 2019, just it has been madness. Like I don't think I actually made it my tweet. I intended to, that this has been a really stressful year, like in terms of like I just feel like I can't keep up. Like the shakeups are so much. Like when this podcast started, I had been playing Pauper for a few years, and then we did the podcast for like a year, and it was fairly gradual changes. Like a card would come in, slowly things would change, and then about November of last year, it was just like, you get foil, everything changes. You get this, everything changes. Like, repeatedly. Like, not just, there's a new deck in town, it's, the new deck in town is the biggest, baddest guy around, constantly. And for me to be able to speak as an expert on this format, it's been exhausting trying to keep up.
Yeah, and I actually think that that's not just something you're experiencing. I think that that's kind of happening everywhere as far as Eternal formats are concerned. I think that like one of the biggest draws to Eternal formats like Pauper and like Legacy, specifically is what I'm thinking of right now, is that these are the people that play these formats. They're people like you and me who have jobs, have families, have responsibilities, have other things to do than just constantly have their finger on the pulse of like what's happening in standard, what's changing in the meta game. You know, this is the kind of thing where, in particular, like a legacy player can build their deck, put it on the shelf for a year, go play their GP, and maybe they have to like update one or two cards in their list or something. You know, this fatigue is very real thing for players who can't be as entrenched as others, where they kind of just want a format that can just settle down. They can just kind of here or there, like, oh, okay, new article from my favorite writer, I'll give that a read. And okay, new card came out in this new set for this deck's sideboard, or like this new card has fit into this other fringe deck and made it slightly better, but like my deck is still overall not affected, whatever. That just hasn't been true at all. You know,
Yeah.
we had War of the Spark, which didn't do much for Pauper at all, but War of the Spark has impacted every other Eternal format in such a huge way. And then you had Modern Horizons directly after that. And then it's just, like you said, boom, one big thing after another. And it's just like people can't get their feet, like the ground back under their feet, because it's just constantly trying to catch back up. And yeah, I think that fatigue is a real concern.
Yeah, I honestly, the changes and new cards that I enjoy the most, like, don't make me stressed out, are things like, say they were to print a Man of War, but it's a May ability. Like, minute, just little tunings of these cards to, like, power up crappy ones. Not
Thrill of possibility.
Thrill of Possibility is amazing. Like, we take a played card, we make it slightly better, not much changes, but people are happy. Instead of, let's take one of the most powerful spells in our format, Ghostly Flicker, reduce its card down to a third, and like set it loose into the world.
Make it dodge graveyard hate too, so that like
Oh,
the rebound on it is so absurd.
yeah,
That's what makes that card just like ridiculous, is the fact that it is an automatic 2-for-1 in itself, not to mention that like whatever you're bouncing is giving you value. And then the fact that it's just like gone in exile, completely safe, so it can't even be like relicked away. Whereas like Ghostly Flicker, yeah, they cast it and they get their value out of it one time, but you can relic it away. It's gone. Problem solved. Like Ephemerate, no, you're not getting it back.
Like, they have a whole turn to like play more spells to like buffer for their graveyard for relic.
Or God forbid they just have a second ephemerate. Relic. And you're just like, meh, ephemerate on my guy. This one goes to exile. Get my other ephemerate back.
Yeah. Yeah, those changes I think are too much. I just want small quality of life upgrades. Anyway.
Yeah, it is hard to keep up with. Yeah, so we didn't get very far down the list before we went on a huge rant/tangent. We made it to Mantle of Tides.
Oh, are you serious? Okay.
So the rest of the spells in the deck: 4 Brainstorm, 4 Preordain, 2 Ponder, 2 Hieroglyphic Illumination, 2 Lightning Bolt, 4 Scred, 1 Magmatic Sinkhole, 4 Counterspell, 1 Dispel, 1 Deprive. So pretty stock in terms of like Scred, with the exception of a couple things. Just a bunch of cantrips. We're playing the Illuminations because that card's so powerful. And Magmatic Sinkhole is kind of just like a concession to other Mantle decks, just me believing that there's going to be some big creatures running around again. We could see Gurmag Angler making a resurgence. Just having a spell that can just kill big things. Like almost unconditionally, just kill a big thing.
And I've seen people throwing in a single Magmatic Sinkhole sometimes, and I'm still wondering why that's so much better than Harvest Pyre. Is it because it can go down to 1 mana?
I think so. So I think the thing about Harvest Pyre, and I'm going to look up Harvest Pyre to make sure I'm right about this.
It also only burns if you have cards in your yard.
Right, and it burns equal to the number of cards in your yard, right? So
however many you exile with it.
Oh, you have to exile. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so I knew it interacted with the cards. So as an additional cost to cast Harvest Pyre, it's an instant, 1 in a red. Exile X cards from your graveyard. Harvest Pyre deals X damage to target creature. That's Harvest Pyre. Magmatic Sinkhole is 5 in a red for an instant. Deal 5 damage to target creature, and it has Delve. I do see this like being better than Harvest Pyre.
Okay.
They're almost functionally the same when you think that, your delving X is equal to, exiling cards. You have to kill a big thing with Harvest Pyre, you still are going to have that threshold of cards in your graveyard. So it's not necessary. Like Harvest Pyre can't necessarily be faster than Magmatic Sinkhole anyway.
Yeah.
And Magmatic Sinkhole can go down to 1 mana, which is relevant in a deck that often functions on 3 to 4 lands.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest draw to Harvest Pyre would be that you can kill things with greater than 5 toughness.
But there's not a lot of that.
I think you're right, yeah.
You're like, oh, I really wish I could kill this Ulamog's Crusher, are so few and far between that you're content. Like 5, I feel like, is a really good threshold on being able to kill 90% of what you're going to encounter in this format. Yeah, sometimes you'll get hit by something where you're just like, okay, yeah, my opponent, they did the thing. They did the exhume strategic planning, get back an Ulamog's Crusher thing, and they got me. I just feel like the amount of time
coming around. Like I do see you made some really valid points, and I'm thinking about it, and like if something does happen to have 6 toughness, say like you do want to just go for their ATOG and see if you can get 3 or 4 artifacts off of the field. You have Scred. That's pretty good.
ATOG, you're probably 2 for 1ing yourself, or you're waiting for the fling and you're trying to win a counter fight. You're trying to win the counter war over the fling. If you're trying to deal with the ATOG in its face, you're very likely just 2 for 1ing yourself anyway. And to have Harvest Pyre be big enough to 1 for 1 with an ATOG, you have to have a lot of cards in your
definitely. Yeah. So that's why I'm thinking that you're right. I think Magmatic Sinkhole being 1 potentially, being more consistent if you have no graveyard, that's enough for me.
All right. It's very likely though that Magmatic Sinkhole should just be like the 3rd Lightning Bolt, or potentially like a Fire Ice. I don't know if that card's going to be good going forward, but it's another card that's kind of on my radar of like, if I start seeing lots of elves decks again, or lots of little 1/1 Mantle of Tides decks running around, I think Fire Ice could be a really good inclusion.
That's a good tip. Like, Magmatic Sinkhole is your Fire Ice slot if that's your meta.
Yeah. Or it very well could just be that I should just have a third Lightning Bolt. My Screds can handle everything else that Lightning Bolt can't, and I just want a Lightning Bolt because I just want the speed and consistency of Lightning Bolt over a card that's sort of situational like Magmatic Sinkhole or Fire Ice.
Especially fast decks. Like, if the meta is full of fast decks, just like your stompy red deck wins type decks, Lightning Bolt's the best choice.
Yeah. So that kind of just goes over everything with that. I'm still a believer in the one of Dispel in the main deck. I'm just always a believer in that. There's just so many things that it's relevant against. Having a 1-mana spell that can just protect your little fragile threats, I really like. And then the Deprive plus Mystic Sanctuary, because that's just really powerful, and it's almost free, Deprive has a bit of downside in that tempo loss. Mystic Sanctuary can be tough if, I've gone like Mystic Sanctuary 2 mountains, and that's my draw, and I have to just play Mystic Sanctuary on turn 1 tapped for no value. There's a bit of downside there, but I think that those downsides are small enough and marginal enough that they make up for like just the power. Like, Deprive on its own is just always going to be good. It's just a 5th counter spell, which is fine. This deck operates on 2 to 3 lands pretty well. So, if I have to bounce my 3rd land to resolve this Deprive and play my next turn with only 3 lands instead of 4, it's not a big deal. And then, like, the Mystic Sanctuary doesn't even always have to get Deprive. I just buy back a Hieroglyphic Illumination, get back a Lightning Bolt, get back that Brainstorm, or just whatever I need. So the upside is just really high on both these cards, and the downsides are very minimal. So worth including. And then if you just get that magical Christmas land, you've got that nice little Deprive Mystic Sanctuary soft lock.
Using it on Hieroglyphic sounded really sweet to me.
Yeah, it is. It is sweet. Spoilers. It's sweet.
Okay.
I've only done it once so far.
Yeah.
But it's sweet. Once was enough for me to know that it's sweet. I didn't even cast the Hieroglyphic Illumination for full value. Like, I just cycled it because I drew Mystic Sanctuary, and I was like, okay. Cycle. All right, so that's the main deck. And jumping into the sideboard, I have 3 blue Elemental Blast, 2 red Elemental Blast, 2 Dispel, 2 Stormbound Geist, 3 Electricity, 1 Swirling Sandstorm, and 2 Relic of Progenitus. So just the very first thing, the blue blasts and the red blasts. This is something I've talked about before. If you don't have like Seeker of the Way or Kiln Fiend or Nivix Cyclops or something like that in your deck, play blue and red blast over Hydro and Pyroblast.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally there's zero downside to playing one over to playing blue blast over Hydro Pyroblast. And there's only upside if you play against Standard Bearer.
Yeah, a little better. So do that.
It's a super marginal edge, but it could just make like all the difference if you're playing against, I don't know, Heroic, and they play a Standard Bearer or something, and you want to counter spell. Well, you wouldn't have either of these spells against Heroic, but anyway.
Yeah, but maybe you're playing against Monarch.
Yeah, Monarch's more likely. It's, again, super marginal, but it's just like there's zero downside to having these in your deck over Pyro and Hydroblast. And there's that like very tiny, like marginal percentage where you could just get wrecked by someone having a Standard Bearer randomly. It's just like, why you don't need to open yourself up to that potential.
So one thing that I was seeing when I was going through blue decks and looking at their sideboards to try to play today was that Stormbound Geist has disappeared out of blue sideboards, like a bunch of them. I'm not sure why.
Weird.
But it's weird, right?
I can't imagine why. I don't know the answer to that question at all.
Yeah, same. I think that the Stormbound Geist still has to be good.
I mean,
I like it
in people's main decks? Because Alex doesn't have any in the sideboard because the 4 are in the main.
Well, yeah.
So there's 75s that don't have Stormbound Geist.
Yeah, and it's really weird. I mean, I will go with Alex Ullman over the randos that did well in tournaments and stuff. And if he's saying the 4 Stormbound Geist in the main, like, they've got to really be good still.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 1 in the main, 2 in the side. And the
Yeah.
only reason I'm not playing more in the main is just because that many in the main deck doesn't really fit with Delver, what you're trying to do in a Delver deck. But still, just like having the 1 is just such upside that it's worth it. I can't imagine why you would not be playing Stormbound Geist somewhere in your 75. That's baffling to me.
Same.
I really wonder why.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, there's not a whole lot of data since that banning. It's only been a week, like 6 days.
Maybe people had forgotten about it because the card was really bad during the Jeskai era.
Yeah.
I would not have put this card in my deck 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Maybe that's just it. It's just we're
People
adjusting
haven't
back.
adjusted. People haven't adjusted to Stormbound Geist being really good against an army of 1/1 flyers and Delver of Secrets.
Yeah.
People are used to just matching up really poorly against a Core Skyfisher, and yeah, I'm sure we might see it popping up again in the future.
All right, I think that's everything. So let's just move on to end times.
End times.
End times.
All right, well, that's the show. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Common Knowledge. Again, big thank you to all of our great sponsors at inkgaming.com and GameGrid Midvale. Check out their online store in the link below, and don't forget about that coupon code CCMTG10, good for a 10% discount on all Ink Gaming supplies and accessories. You can find the show on puremtgo.com, as well as the Constructed Criticism YouTube channel. You can also send us an email if you'd like to at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. We love your emails. We love reading them. You can find the show on Twitter at CKPodcastMTG, as well as our ever-growing Facebook group, Common Knowledge. And Sean, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Lobbert8, that is LOBBERT and the number 8, as well as YouTube. You can find me if you just search for Lobbert. I have videos of me playing Pauper, usually Pauper Leagues there, so check that out.
Boom. And you can find me also on Twitter at bclark_CK. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye forever.